Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the gun violence in the United States of America. Now, USA faced yet another horror on Tuesday after a lone 18-year-old gunman entered an elementary school in Texas with two assault rifles and killed at least 19 children and two adults before he was killed by the law enforcement agencies. This was the second mass shooting in less than 2 weeks in USA. In fact, there have been more mass shootings than days in 2022 so far. According to the non-profit organization Gun Violence Archive, there have been at least 212 mass shootings in 144 days till 24th of May this year in America. Through a series of tweets, US President Joe Biden has called on his country to turn its collective pain into political action on the issue of gun violence. In April this year, President Biden had unveiled a new rule to rein in so-called ghost guns and ban the manufacturing of untraceable firearms. While proposal to overhaul gun laws face steep odds at the federal level, there are some areas of bipartisan agreement. But whether that's enough to break congressional gridlock is yet to be seen. Today, we will discuss and analyze all aspects of this issue. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us in the studio Professor V. Rajalakshmi. She's a sociologist and also teaches at the University of Delhi. We also have with us Dr. Meera Chadha Borwankar. She is the former Commissioner of Police, Pune. And we're also joined by two panelists from the United States of America. Professor Cecil Foster is joining us. He is the public intellectual and chairman of the Department of Translation Studies at University of Buffalo at New York. And we also have with us Mr. Aditya Satsangi. He is an American citizen and author from San Diego, USA. Welcome, all of you, to Sunset Television. I'll first begin with our panelists from who are joining us from the United States of America. And I'd like to start with you, Professor Foster. An horrific incident. And I would say a repeat after repeat of such incidents happening in USA.
Indeed it is, and thanks for having me. And I am speaking from Buffalo, where about 11 days ago, we had the mass shooting where a gunman traveled about 200 miles into Buffalo to hunt down Black people shopping at a supermarket, a top supermarket. And now we have this horrific incident happening in the Texas, where a gunman again walks into a school and slaughter such innocent lives. This is something that I think is deeply embedded in American culture, and it goes to the very heart of what is America itself, and something that Americans really have to look at themselves in the mirror and confront the fact that the society is a very violent society. It was founded on violence and it's perpetrated through violence. And we see the psychology of it in terms of the level of fear for the gun, when it is quite usual for someone to give an 18-year-old a gun for a birthday present. I don't know of too many other cultures elsewhere in the world that these kinds of things happen. Okay. For me personally, a gun is a very ugly thing. It is an instrument of death. It kills people or it kills animals, but it kills. And the idea that a gun is a beautiful thing that can be given to someone and it is a sign of protection or manliness or whatever is beyond me. And I think that until Americans start to really come to terms with this dastardly thing, that we're going to have more and more of these incidences.
Okay. Mr. Satsangi, I'd like to bring you in here, your views on why is this steep rise in number of mass shootings taking place in the United States of America. The figures speak for themselves. Approximately 200, if we go by, the report of the non-government organization, in 144 days in this year alone, and repeat after repeat in various places, specifically in elementary schools, and offenders, as in shooters, are as young as 18-year-olds.
The main reason of the sudden spurt in the gun violence is because of the lack of systemic checks on the people who are buying these guns. Now, in both the cases, the shooters prepared themselves in advance. Like in case of Buffalo, the shooter was planning in months in advance. And in this case, the shooter was upset at something. And again, 18 or 19 or 20-year-old kids. Now, I call them kids because they're still not fully framed in the mind. And analyzing this situation, the sudden spurt is due to many, many factors, because the family structures in the US have broken down, the mental health and the food which Americans consume is filled with chemicals. And this is another reason. And third is there is no emotional support. These are three main reasons out there. Plus, and I wrote in my book also, Gold, Glory, and God, I coined a new term called critical faith theory. So the people who are of color, they are of lesser faith. That is European mindset, and including Indian Americans, and so all these factors combined, and the easy accessibility of guns makes it possible. I'm not against the gun laws per se, because the gun laws were purposely enacted for the citizens to protect themselves against the rogue governments. And that's how the US is the only country which allows the citizens to own guns should the government go rogue. That is the main logic given. And I fully, if you go back to the history in 1776 and the fight over the countries in the south, the lands in the south, and the frontier wars, and they have themselves, European settlers, fought against the European settlers called the Yankees, the South versus the North.
But Mr. Satsangi, the citizens are now turning those guns on each other.
So, I see the incidents. It's just like when you drive a car on the road. If a driver is driving a car incorrectly and the car hits somebody, the fault is of the driver, not the car. So same is with the gun laws. Like majority of the gun owners in the US, they are peaceful and they don't participate in such laws, such kind of activities. And the people who are actually participating in such kind of violence are mentally deranged people. So there is a need for a systemic check here. The mental health, the food. So like in this country, I just give an example, is the biggest consumer of chemical laden food. Now, if you look at every single slaughterhouse in the US, is filled with animals killed with untold number of chemicals.
We'll come to those gun laws, but I'm pretty sure Professor Cecil will have a response to make. But let me first bring in the other two panelists as well. I'll start with you, Dr. Meeran, and vis-a-vis these two aspects. One is the loopholes in the existing laws. That's something which has been pointed out time and again, and there has been an ongoing debate on that as well. The second aspect, as both Professor Cecil and Mr. Satsangi are referring to, in terms of the social issues, the breakdown at the social level or at the family level or other related aspects as well. Or should we say, is it a combination of both here?
So while I agree with the panelist about breakdown of family, no emotional support leading to mental health issues, I do not agree that the open policy of even kids above 18 having guns has not contributed to this kind of carnage. I feel in India today we are safe because one, we don't distrust our government. I can never think that my government will go rogue, the word which my other esteemed panelist has used. Therefore, we license guns. We are very careful as Commissioner of Police. Me and my team, we used to be very careful who needs to have a gun. So we give a license on need basis. It's not a luxury, it's not a toy as it has become in US. So in that, I disagree with the my second panelist. I feel gun laws should be strict. Instead, encourage the citizens to trust the government, and in US, strengthening of family and social bonds so that mental health issue is brought to the focus and attended to.
Professor Rajalakshmi, from the social point of view, and to understand it at a much better level, because it becomes a cause of concern when we see at the age group of the offenders here, those who are involved in these criminal activities, involved in these mass shootings. The age group is very tender, just above 18 years. In some cases, might be below that as well. There are other cases where the offender might be above 30, 35, around 40 as well, but majority of them there. And then targeting schools, shopping malls, churches.
To begin with, I would say that the whole process of socialization plays a very important role. Because you know what, when we go to a toy shop and then we ask that we want to buy a gift, the first thing they ask a boy or a girl. And the moment you say it's a boy, then they start showing you guns and all. So right from the beginning, like, what happens is giving a gift, or for that matter, at home also, as a small child, when you're playing with the gun and when you're showing that power that, you can actually hit things and all, the parents feel very proud. And that whole sense of control, the whole sense of that I'm in control of the situation begins from the very tender age. And then slowly that starts building up. Then what happens after a certain age, when you come to the, to interact with the wider society, I mean to say that when he grows a little older, maybe about 15 or about 14, then what happens when he sees that things are not really in control of him, then he starts looking for other avenues, where he starts, trying to show that, yes, he's more powerful. Why? Mainly because, as Mr. Aditya really said very rightly, that, the family structure also plays a very important
and
role.
easy availability of firearms adds fuel to the fire.
And all. That is one thing. And the other thing is, the whole concept of individualism. That is, you are an individual, you have to take care of yourself and you need to cope up with your own things. And then when he's not able to cope up, he or she is not able to cope up in the sense, do not have the power to hold things, have, maybe the life not under control and things. Because in the beginning, when he was small, he was taught that, if you are able to control, then you're a better person, a better individual. So all these things really play a very, very, strongly in a child's or in a person's mind. And so therefore, the person, that's one of the reasons. And as he rightly pointed out, that family, spend more time with the family, or the fact that, you're taught to be independent, the stress levels have also increased. And basically because of these corona pandemic and other pandemics, where the situation has become very difficult and uncertain, people feel that, they need to find something where they can control. And one way to control is to just go randomly shooting, killing people. I mean, that's a mentality. Unfortunately, a very sick mentality, but yes.
Okay. Let me bring back Professor Cecil Foster here. And Professor Foster, two aspects. Let's take them one by one. First, let's talk about, do you agree with this stipulation which Mr. Satsangi and Dr. Borwankar agrees to it. Professor Rajalakshmi is also pointing out to it that social and family bonds in America have broken down to a greater extent. There is no emotional support that forms the basis of an individual trying to or willing to engage in criminal acts like these. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I do not identify that as the biggest issue. For me, the biggest issue is one that we need not skirt, and it is something called racism. The United States is a deeply racist country. It is founded on racism. Most of these incidents that we're talking about are by racialized people, sometimes even racialized people taking out violence on themselves. And I am not that quick to point to mental illness. I think that mental illness is a factor, but as President Biden said last night, just about every other country in the world has people with mental illness, yet they don't go around and slaughter one another. We have to deal with the fact that we're talking about something that is very ingrained in the American culture, something that is very systemic and goes beyond the family. And it is the fact that while it is true that the Second Amendment talks about protection against rogue governments and tyrannizing governments, we cannot forget that part of that thinking was also that guns should be readily available so that white people could turn them against slaves and other non-white people in terms of protecting themselves and their societies. So that this love affair with guns goes beyond mental illness. It goes
Okay,
beyond the
so
family
in your
breakdown.
views,
It
Professor
goes
Foster,
beyond
the solution
power.
lies in making adequate changes to the gun laws. Is that what you're pointing out?
Yes, and I would like to see maybe even to the point where there is a change to the amendment to the second amendment and this idea that people should own guns. I do not understand why people need to own guns if they live in a society. I agree with Marine. If you live in a society, then you should trust your society. What is this nonsense about people having to own guns in case their government turn against them? They are the government. Are they going to turn against themselves? I mean, this idea that you need to protect and police your own government is nonsense. And it is contingent only on the notion of white supremacists who believe in replacement theory and the notion that the government itself is against them and is seeking to replace them.
Okay, okay. Mr. Satsangi, that's quite a strong point of view coming in there, and this point of view is not only with Professor Foster. A sizable section of intellectuals and others in United States of America also have been pointing out for quite a long time now, including the president himself, that there are significant changes which need to be made in the gun laws, the existing gun laws of the country. Do you agree with that?
Let me, to some parts, I disagree with Dr. Cecil, actually. And now let me give you some little bit history lessons here, a little bit about, because I'm the author of the book Gold, Glory, and God. So when I was writing my book, I coined a new term. So right now it's very famous in the US, critical race theory. And that's what Dr. Cecil is referring to, critical race theory, where the white supremacists, that the words that he used over there. The biggest problem in the US is faith-based supremacy. The churches, now when he talks about, and he's an African origin, we can see that, an African origin practicing Christianity. And now he says the white supremacist, the white colored guy, he's also practicing Christian. So both religions are the same. Both of them are practicing the same religion. So how can one religion turn over the another person from the same religion? Mm-hmm. So the gun laws are the strictest in the US. I live in California, and in California, New York, where the last gunman in Buffalo was from New York, and when he obtained a gun and he went there and shot, the laws are very strict. I mean, it's very difficult to get a gun nowadays, including bullets are counted nowadays. So I think Dr. Cecil doesn't know the reality on the ground. If he goes to buy a gun, he can find it out. I own guns. I know how difficult it is. And the second thing, the American society is built on faith-based supremacy, that if they are Christians, they're superior, they have the higher moral right. Everybody will talk about the God, and everybody, I see the whole nation crying, whether it's a white or the black or a brown or a green. So racism is not the major issue in the gun violence. The racism was an issue when the African slaves were brought to the country. That time there was an issue. It was the Republican Party which ended the slavery, which Dr. Cecil will agree on that. And I'm an author.
But I don't understand what is your contention, because whether it is religion or not.
When you say white-based supremacy, that's a problem for me.
Okay.
Because you are discounting the fact that that all the Christians, they're taught in the church. Like I'm a Hindu, American Hindu. Like they've been taught in the church that the Hindus have no faith. They're taught in the church. So my point to you is, it's not about white supremacy. It's about the craziness of individuals. Here, the boy is trained. He has no parents.
Okay, but Mr. Satsangi, ultimately, you do agree to one part of the problem there, and that you referred to in the first response as well, that yes, there might be some loopholes in the gun laws which might have to be rectified by the governments. Of course, there is the issue of ghost guns, on which a new law was unveiled by President Biden just last month in April itself. Let's look at it from, let's try to understand from the other perspective as well, from other countries. Dr. Borwankan here has been an commissioner of police in India, has been an IPS officer. Dr. Borwankan, in terms of tightening the laws and the kind of laws which we have and the kind of laws which exist elsewhere in USA. For example, Mr. Satsangi was referring to that the United States has the strictest laws possible, but the same comment comes from those in United Kingdom as well. There have been mass shootings in UK also. Fortunately, there have been not, much reported cases of this level in India. So, what is it that other nations perhaps might learn from the laws, the kind of laws we have, or the way we regulate firearms?
So when we regulate, as I said earlier, we find out the licensing authorities are all senior officers. Licenses for arms and ammunition is not given at lower level. Lower level officers can only recommend, police station officers can only recommend, and the final authorities with the senior officer who is supposed to apply his or her mind about the need for a license. So I feel this is a very fact of which India should be proud of, that we have been able to scrutinize and prune the need, and therefore only people who actually deserve to have guns have the guns. And yet, mind you, our audience must know that we feel sad and that sometimes these licensed guns are also used for celebration purposes at marriage. And sometimes desi katta, which is an unlicensed weapon, that also comes out in public and is used.
Just like the
But
ghost guns
on
in
the
America.
whole, being very strict about the need of having a gun and also for transporting it from one state to another, we follow it very strictly. In US, I don't agree that laws are very strict. I feel Europe has both license and, except for a few aberrations where guns have been misused, despite not having a very strong family structure, misuse of guns is less in Europe. Nearly non-existent in India and very rampant in US because of the identified reasons of family breakthrough, mental health illness, and very easy accesses to guns.
Okay. Let's bring this discussion to an end. But before that, let's quickly hear Professor Rajalakshmi here as well. Apart from the legal point of view and from the rules which we're talking about vis-a-vis guns, and of course the pro-gun and anti-gun lobby will have their own viewpoints there. But one common aspect is the social issues involved.
Yes, I do agree with the professor when he talks about that, racial discrimination or these kind of do play a very important role. Like, for example, of course, we all know that America is a melting pot. It has a melting pot culture. That is, there are different ethnic groups and all. Wherever you see, wherever you see, you do see that, the places where there are multi-racial or multi-ethnic groups, there are conflicts. The conflict is mainly because of the fact that the resources are limited, the resources are scarce, the resources have to be, properly distributed, people have to have access, proper access. These things play a very important role. So I do agree with Professor on that. And the other very important thing is that, it's very difficult to say that whether it is because of the society or it's because of the individual. Because society, individual, there is a reciprocal relationship. Society is there, individual just atoms. Sometimes one needs to look at that. Or because the individuals are there, the society survives. So when you look at the relationship between individual and the society, it's a two-way relationship.
Indeed.
As a reciprocal relationship. So it a lot depends upon the culture, a family structure, of course. And I do agree with Mr. Aditya when he talks about food. Food plays a very, very important role in your personal development. And the way in which you react, your reactions, your relationship with the others. So I would really say that all these kind of violence we can try to get, or rather minimize it, by having strong family bondings, spending more time with your loved ones, spending less time with the digital world, and having more interaction with each other. So that may help, and that would definitely help.
And can coupled with plugging those loopholes in laws, the existing laws there. Thank you so much, Professor Rajalakshmi, Dr. Borwankar, as well as Mr. Satsangi and Professor Cecil Foster also for sharing your valuable time and inputs with us and our viewers as our experts were pointing out. Of course, there are, multiple reasons behind what is happening in the United States of America vis-a-vis the gun violence, guns being picked up by youngsters, being used at places like elementary schools or churches or even shopping malls. But of course, social issues, the social structure, the family bonding, the emotional support is something which will have to be looked into as much as plugging the loopholes in the existing laws, which President Biden as well as others in the country are pointing out to. We'll keep a close watch on all the developments and keep on bringing you all the details here on Sunset Television. Till then, keep watching. Thank you.